finish up today with, this is one of our most important ones that we teach a lot of times, because we have a culture, church culture of wonderful intentions that don't always produce great results. And so these principles that we will go by, these principles that we use, some of them you can find, I think some precedent in the scriptures, but a lot of this is just over through the IMB over the last hundred of years. We've learned a lot of different things in a lot of different contexts, what's created problems and what's hindered the gospel from moving quickly in an area and moving faster. So we're going to look through this. We call this the INR of missions. So that's an acronym. We're going to look at what that means. So one of the things, there are 3 mission challenges to getting the gospel to every nation, to every people group. There are 3 major mission challenges to doing that. One of the big ones is just getting people from lost to saved. I mean, this is big, and we typically just celebrate here, especially if we worked in an area for a long time, and people have come to faith. It's almost like you're tempted to just stop and celebrate, we've done it, we've made it, But the next challenge is getting people from saved to church. So this is a hard part too, to get people there. The other challenge then is, and this may be our greatest challenge to reaching people, is from church to multiplying churches. So this idea that now we've started a church in this area, and they are carrying on that DNA, and they will move to another area to start the church. So we've expanded the mission field. We believe that missionaries, the workers, are going to be among the harvest. Does that make sense? The workers for the task of the Great Commission are going to be among the harvest. So this is probably this is our major challenge, because typically what we've done is we've moved to here. Somewhere along the way, the transfer of that authority to go died somewhere. And it's part of our DNA as churches. You find most churches now are trying to do, I talk to churches on a weekly basis. And what I hear every single pastor tell me is, I'm trying to get my church to understand missions. And I'm going, well, why didn't we do that in the first place? Why wasn't that part of the first part of helping them to understand what it means to follow Jesus? And so most of our churches here in the U.S. were planted never with the intention that church would plant another church. And so, but I don't think that's the New Testament pattern. The New Testament pattern is churches are planted, and then those churches send out workers to go to different areas, and they plant new works. So how can we see churches multiply? We believe that some of the solution lies in our willingness to adjust strategies and practices that have historically provided growth by addition, and to implement practices and strategies that will lead to growth by multiplication. We're going to expound on this idea in a little bit. Growth by multiplication is best realized in a context that addresses issues. These are some big words here, but we'll get through them. Indigeneity, non-dependency, and reproducibility. So what we want to do is we want to take our plans that we have to reach people, and we want to filter those plans through a filter, an indigenous, a non-dependent, and a reproducible filter. If you're saying, I don't know what that means yet, don't worry, we're going to talk about this, which is going to lead to strategies that lead to multiplying churches. Anybody in here, do we have any business owners? Any business owners in here? Okay, if you start a business, you don't, successful businessmen don't just go, I think I'm going to start a business tomorrow. Well, what's your plan? I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there. What are you going to sell? We're going to sell socks. I heard socks were a hit last night. So we're going to sell socks. Okay, well that's good. Well, what's your plan for selling socks? Well, I don't know what my plan is yet. We're going to figure that out when we get there. And you know what though? You would say that is a foolish businessman. And in the same way, we're not, a lot of times what we do is we kind of do what I call good intentions missions. It's just, well, I don't know, we're just going to go and tell you about Jesus. Well, that's great, but let's make a plan on how we're going to do that. We don't have to be just however about this, but let's make a plan to do it. So indigenous. This is what this word means. Originating or occurring naturally in a particular place. So for example, the indigenous people of Siberia, or coriander, is indigenous to Southern Europe. Anybody from Ohio in here? Any Ohio?
That's the only thing we got.
Okay, anyway. Which of these grows in Ohio?
The Buckeye.
The Buckeye State.
A worthless nut.
What's that nut?
That's a worthless nut right there.
Okay. Well, you know what I like better than the nuts? I like the other Buckeyes.
Right.
The chocolate with, the chocolate with peanut butter.
That's why he's down on the Buckeyes. He's a Michigan fan. So
Ohio is the
ignore what he
armpit
says
of
about
America.
Ohio.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's his worldview.
I feel
His
bad.
worldview.
All right, so the Buckeye, though, is indigenous to Ohio. Even if you want to be a Buckeye, you can't. The banana is not. I haven't seen. I was in Ohio actually about 2 weeks ago, or 2-3 weeks ago, and I didn't see a whole lot of banana trees in Ohio. It was cold. But anyway, so indigenous. Let's look at this. This is the passage of scripture. Somebody read this for me. Anyway.
Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a bronze helmet on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail. David strapped Saul's sword over the armor, and he tried in vain to walk, for he was not used to them. Then David said to Saul, I cannot walk with these, for I am not used to them.
Okay, so everybody's familiar with this story in Scripture, right? You got David and Goliath, and you remember Saul's like, "Hey, David, if you're going to fight Goliath, you're going to have to put on my armor to do it, because this is how warriors fight." And David was a warrior in his own right. He, killed a lot of wild animals already at this point, protecting his sheep. But there was an idea of what a warrior was like. And a warrior wore this stuff. Well, David is like, I've never trained for these. I've never put these on. This isn't familiar to me. I'm not used to them. And this is exactly what we try and do a lot of times. We go into an area and we present to them what church, what life, what being a Christian, what a Christian man is supposed to look like. And we try to present what a pastor is supposed to do. And what we do is we bring foreign ideas that are not biblical, they're just cultural, and we place them on the people that we're trying to work with. And they're just like David. It's like, how am I supposed to walk in this? And we'll open this up a little more. Paul talks about he's made himself, I'm free with respect to all. I've made myself a slave to all so that I might win more. To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I become all things to all people, that I might by all means save some. So as we think through things of this term indigenous, or what are some of the things that we need to think through? For example, we've talked about this already. The format of the gospel. Does the gospel need to be presented orally, or is this a literate culture? How do we need to present the gospel in this context? If they're not used, okay. So I wrote. This is from the church that we're part of in Chattanooga. I wrote the sermon notes out a few weeks ago. And anyway, this is back in November. I wrote the sermon notes out, and there was there were 3 points, and then underneath those points, I wrote a bunch of bullets, okay? And you've got a sheet in front of you that's very similarly set up to that. If I've never learned this way before, ever, this is not going to make sense to me, okay? And that's what we have to be really, really careful of. It's things like that. We can present the gospel in this. I was translating one time for a pastor who had come down, and this was in Peru, not in Mexico, and he wanted to share with the group that we were ministering to. And foolishly, I said yes, that he could share. And so he pulled out his sermon notes from the week before on John 3:16. The people that he was trying to share with were completely lost. It didn't make any sense to them whatsoever. That's not the way they learn information. He had 3 P's, well, one that didn't translate very well, but he had 3 P's that he had for his sermon points on John 3:16, and he probably felt good because he got preached that sermon in Peru, but it didn't do any good. And so one of the questions that we really need to ask ourselves, and this is a hard question, are we doing this to feel good, or are we doing this because these people need the gospel? And if it's because these people need the gospel, which I believe that's the reason why we go,
Amen.
then we're going to be sensitive to these things. We're going to adapt. We're going to change who we are. What language does the gospel need to be presented in? Syncretism. We've talked about this a bunch. What is the evidence of a transformed life in this culture? Form and function. What is church going to look like here? Local leadership. Are the leaderships local, or are they from outside? I can just go ahead and tell you how this is going to go over. All right, indigenous Mexico. There's already a stigma between the city and the people out in these villages. The people in the city believe they're better than the people in the villages. That's just normal. Christians are getting over that, but they're not there yet. They have a hard time with this. We have a hard time with things like that here in our culture too. We have issues like that too. One of the challenges and one of the things that people want to do is they want to take a pastor from the city and they want to implant him in a village. And it typically does not go very well. Because the people from the village do not like him, and he thinks he's better. He typically thinks he's better than everyone else. And so there are some major issues to this. This is one of the reasons why we just think wisdom is a good factor here, that leadership should be local. These are some things. So I want to give us an example. All right, I think this example is in your notes. This is, and I want you, as I read this out loud, or as you read it to yourself, I want you to think, what are some of the indigenous challenges in this example? All right? The Calvary Church mission team made a vision trip to a rural church in the Americas and shared the following plan for a 3-year partnership. Year 1, install windows and screens in the church sanctuary. The mosquitoes nearly carried us away while we slept on the church pews, they reported. Year 2, raise funds to ship and install air conditioning units against the oppressive heat. Recognizing the absence of hymnals and any recognizable melody in the church's worship, for year 3, they proposed to take a PowerPoint machine and a piano. We're a small church, but we can do this for our poor brothers in Rincon Trazado. They challenged their church. All right. What are some of the indigenous challenges? This is a crazy one.
PowerPoint is?
Are they going to know what PowerPoint is?
Are they gonna be paid the electric bill, that AC
Yeah, the
system?
electric.
Are you going to pay the are you going to pay the electric bill? You brought that down.
If they didn't put windows in, they wouldn't even get to.
You're gonna import the gas probably to run the generator to power the AC.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other question. What air conditioners? They require maintenance. They require.
Bring on.
Okay. The point. This is a ridiculous example. Obviously, this is a ridiculous example. But sometimes we do things that are a little more subtle than this. But what we're doing is, are all these things for the poor brothers in Rincon Trazado? They're for the mission team going down.
Yeah.
So they can feel a little bit more comfortable. And I've got news for you. Really, y'all got a sweet deal. I mean, the place y'all are working in, I think it's a pretty comfortable place. That's just me. I know some other really, really difficult places to get through where you're going to have to sleep in challenging places. I hope y'all get to eat some fun stuff over the next few years. But this is a big issue. A lot of times we try and bring our things from the outside because we see these things are important. And in reality, maybe we just need to look at the culture around us and go, okay, no one has an air conditioner here. No one has screens on their windows. And, anyway, so we do need to think through issues like this. I want to move on to the next one, non-dependency. So of all the challenges that missionaries and short-term mission teams face, the creation of unhealthy dependencies has done more to slow the spread of the gospel than any other single issue. Whether or not we want to admit it, we all find ourselves at one point in time providing help that hurts. Okay? And so let's look through this. What does Merriam-Webster say about this, about dependent? Dependent is someone who is unable to exist, sustain oneself, or act appropriately or normally without the assistance or direction of another. So, for example, if you take your teenager's iPhone away from them, they lose their minds. Yeah? Okay? And so this is it. When we come in, and whether it be financial, whether it be leadership in our teaching, if we are the only ones doing it, then they become dependent upon us. That's why on your tax form, when you fill out that tax form, it's always nice to have more dependents because you know you're going to have some more coming back in. I loved it when we got to write down the second one on that tax form. All right, but I think I'm done. Because I realize they take up, over the long run, it doesn't work out. But that dependence section is a big deal because the government recognizes that those children are dependent upon you to exist. Okay, without you, they're not gonna cope and do so well with life. And it's in the same way. If we come in and we do the same, and we take care of people like they're children, we're going to create a lot of unhealthy dependencies. Okay? And so let's look at what are some of the things that create unhealthy dependencies? Number one, assuming that money is the answer to all problems. This is a big one on us. We do this here in the U.S. all the time. We make the assumption that, okay, we've got, I'm going to give you this one. I love this one in the village that we work in. We show up one day, I think there's 10 of us, 10 people that are gathered in this house, and they pull out one chicken breast and 30 tortillas and manage to feed every single person in the house with one chicken breast and 30 tortillas. But we think here in the U.S., well, that's just not enough. People got to have enough food to eat. That's not enough food. But you see, a lot of times if we come in and say, start throwing money at issues, then one, creativity is not allowed to thrive in these environments. And you know what? We're not going to be able to throw money at these issues long term. And so then, if we're constantly throwing money at the issues, creativity begins to go down. We were joking with Dal earlier. I said, man, Dal he had to Google how to get the projector to work up here. I said, man, just imagine if we didn't have Google, we'd have to figure it out on our own. You know? And so, but this is exactly what happens is when we go into places, we've got to allow church and all these things to you've got to allow them to be able to figure some of those things out and what it's going to look like there. Ongoing giving to a small group of selected individuals is another big one. So we've got this guy there, and we clearly see the Lord's leading for him to be a pastor of this local church. And man, we just need him to devote, Dal's full-time here at the church, he gets paid a salary. This guy here probably needs to get paid a salary too. We want him to be full-time. Well, you realize if you start shipping outside money in here, what's going to happen is the people in the village and the church congregation are going to be jealous. And that's guaranteed. Guaranteed. They're guaranteed jealous. A lot of times we've seen it create a lot of arrogance in the pastor or the leader, and they quit working. They typically quit working. What we don't understand, what we don't realize though, is in these types of environments, they do not see a pastor as a legitimate form of work. Okay? Well, you can do that on the side. Dal, I know we don't agree on that, but I'm telling you, their congregation initially is going to agree on that. And the people in that village are going to agree on that. And so I know a pastor up in the northern part of Oaxaca, and he could be supported 100% by his church. He has chosen to work full time because it makes him a better evangelist inside of his community because the people respect him. You know what? Paul did the same thing. Paul did the same thing. He said, I'm not even going to ask. I did with the Corinthian church. I didn't ask anything from them, and we just wanted to proclaim Christ. And so we can do that. Providing money for something that is a perceived need, but not an actual need. Okay? So this is when we go in and sort of like that with the air conditioner. We perceive that an air conditioner is needed here. But we really haven't asked. And that's why it's important to ask what are the actual needs. And then if we are going to address the needs, we want to address them in a way that benefits the entire community, not just one person or a group of people. And one of the things that I would go further with this on is you don't be the only provider of finance stuff. You need to make sure that if you are gonna do that, you need to make sure that you're in partnership and that someone else is providing something as well. It creates some major, major challenges, and they'll take advantage of it. They will, people will take complete, and I'm not saying they as in just people in Mexico. You start giving people money here, they'll take advantage of it too. Okay? So we just need to think through and be careful about that. Establishing a precedent at the initial work with the people group that is based on outside funding. We've kind of gone through this. It's unintentionally assuming that national believers cannot function. At some point in time, and I think it's initially, especially if we're doing storying, we should expect that they tell the stories with other people. Okay? And when we assume that we're the only ones that can do this job, we've handicapped the local church. So what are some of the consequences of this? Financial paternalism is one of them. The golden rule. You guys know what the golden rule is? What's the golden rule? He who has the gold makes the rules.
Oh, yeah.
That golden rule. And this is a lot of times what happens. I tell my kids all the time, my kids the other day, they got mad at me about something. I said, okay, that's fine. From now on, you can go buy your own groceries. How about that one? You go buy your own groceries. You know what? I make the rules in my house, not you. And so when we're when we're financing something, we will, whether we think we won't or not, we will inevitably think that you owe me something. Let me tell you something. I feel this all the time. I'm an IMB missionary. You know where my support comes from?
Churches and people.
You do not want to know the stuff they hold us accountable. Well, you might, but the stuff that they hold us accountable to, I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. But when the gold's coming from somewhere, they're making the rules for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, a sense of helplessness. The feeling of helplessness, not of being able to do what the Holy Spirit has asked you to do. So when we're constantly in control of things, it doesn't allow for others to be able to feel like they can do anything. Social separation, often the outside support of the pastor or congregation causes jealousy. We talked about this. Social immaturity. A local congregation is less motivated to obey the Scripture, biblical stewardship. So if I know that you're just going to pay my way, I don't have to give sacrificially. And I think that's where the New Testament leads us to, is sacrificial giving. I think the tithe is a part of that, but I think it leads us above that in the New Testament to what we call sacrificial giving, giving where it hurts. And I think maybe the church is going to tithe. Maybe they'll tithe because they think it's a biblical idea, but they're not going to give sacrificially because they know, man, Dal's church down there, we got the hookup with those guys. They're giving us some good stuff. Okay? So this was written not by a Christian, but this was after the Haiti earthquake. This is what he wrote. To help Haiti in foreign aid. For actual Haitians, however, just about every conceivable aid scheme beyond immediate humanitarian relief will lead to more poverty, more corruption, and less institutional capacity. It will benefit the well-connected at the expense of the truly needy. It will divert resources from where they're needed most and crowd out local enterprise. It will foster the very culture of dependence the country so desperately needs to break. This country continually receives mission teams over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And a lot of it is not helping the local economy. A lot of it is damaging the local economy beyond repair. Because people no longer see the need to work. And so it's kind of like the old phrase, you can give a man a fish, And he can eat for a day, or you can teach a man to fish, and he can feed himself for a lifetime. And that's what we want to be about. We don't want to just feed people. We want to teach people to fish. Does that make sense? You know, that idea, that concept is where we want to go. Because if all they're just dependent upon us, they're not growing in their spiritual walk with Christ. And so we want to think through those things. One look at financial dependencies. This is just a ridiculous example, but I love it. A lot of times, one of the things I hear, we want to go down there and build a church. Build a church, man. We go down there and build a church. How much money y'all need to build a church? I don't need any money to build a church. So Mexico has a lost population of around 100 million people. To double the current evangelization of 6% to 12%, which means one church for every 500 people, the number of churches needed is 200,000. The cost of construction is $7 billion at 35,000 per church. Time to construct 2,000 years and 100 churches per year. Okay, let's just throw that out. Okay? Or we've done the math for you. It doesn't work out so well. Don't worry about building a church. If the local believers want a church, they will build it. I promise you, they will build it, or they will find a way to make it work. But that is not your responsibility to do that. I've never seen that in the New Testament. I've never seen in the New Testament where funds were given so that someone could build something. Never. Not once. And I'm not saying that house church is necessary. I'm just saying that the local church can be very creative. We've got a lady in our village, and she's not a believer yet, but she, I don't know, the Lord is working in her somehow. We've been sharing stories with their family for the last couple of years, and she said, you know what, I think the people in my village, everyone needs to hear these stories. I said, I think so too. And I said, well, how are we going to, so I looked at her, I said, well, how are we going to do that? And she goes, well, I'll tell you what, I've got space in my yard. What if we just put up a shelter with a tarp over it, and then we just took some wood and we just made some benches, and we could put them down there. People could come. Okay. I'll help you build it. You know, and I'll be there to put the hammer and the nails in. And anyway, I'm just going, like, there are solutions to a lot of problems that we just hadn't thought about. And so, because we live in the Google world. But we don't, you know, these guys live in the creative world. Allow them to be creative in how these things are done. So, go through some of these. I don't want to spend too much time on that. But let's look at reproducible. We want to make sure that what we do is reproducible. So how can we do this? Some overarching principles for reproducibility. Number one, don't do things for others that they can and should do for themselves. Okay? I'm not saying don't do nice things for people. Okay? Now, please don't be saying that. But what I'm saying is like, parents, don't go in your kids' rooms and pick up their clothes and their toys. Make your kids do that on their own. They can do it. They're capable. They're capable, you know? And so, anyway, in that same way, we need to allow people to be capable. I don't know. I don't know how the rest of the men in here in the room feel, but I really don't like somebody doing everything for me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I kind of have the attitude, just let me do it. So the other day, quick funny story to go along with this. The other day, we were trying to get some gas, natural gas lines installed in the house that we were living in here in the U.S. It's my father-in-law's house. And so I was over there trying to help the guys as they were going to install the lines. And so underneath the house, though, they have a cellar. And so what we're going to have to do is go underneath the house and see where the lines need to go and set those things up. So we open up the cellar door and it leads down into this, cellar that's been dug out, so it's not concrete or anything, it's dug out. And this wooden ladder that goes down to the bottom. At the bottom, I did not realize this, but my father-in-law had put a trap down there, trap for animals. You know, one of those ones that you walk in. What do they call them? Where not a bear trap, but where they step in and then the steel trap. Okay, the steel trap. My father-in-law put a steel trap down there because they knew they had problems with critters getting under the house and stuff like that. We look down there and there is a skunk.
Oh.
Skunk caught in that trap, and he is not dead, he is alive. I don't know how long he's been there, but he is very much alive. And so the guys who were going to install the gas look down there, and the guy goes, I ain't going down there, man. That's all you. And he said, we're not touching that. I said, okay. So we started trying to call wildlife people. Can we get somebody out here to get the skunk out? And then, come to find out, we finally get a hold of somebody that'll do this, and the guy says, well, that'll be $200. What, $200? Man, we already got the skunk trapped. Like, not like you got to go down there and get it. You know, he's trapped. So anyway, we're sitting at the house, and my wife, Mandy, she looks at me, she goes, I think we can get it out. I said, well, let's see. And so she starts doing what people in our age do, Google. We start Googling. We get on YouTube. We watch a YouTube video on how to do this. How to get the skunk out of the trap. So we've got it figured out. You go, and this is what you do. So if y'all ever catch a skunk in the trap, you take what you do. You see a big old piece of plastic. It could be a tarp, it could be a shower curtain, whatever. And you walk up to the trap with it going all the way down, and you hold the shower curtain up like this. So it can't spray you. The other thing is it won't spray what it can't see. That's what we read. And so then you put the tarp, or we used a shower curtain. So I went down that ladder to the bottom, and then I put the shower curtain over the cage like that. I had to move the ladder and lift it up, and we handed it out to my wife. But my wife looked at me, and she said, well, I'll go down there and do it. I said, you ain't going down there, because I am not going to let that happen. Because if you go down there, you'll tell everyone that you went down there and how your husband cheated. I got more pride than that, boys. And so I didn't want to be sprayed, but I was willing to be sprayed before I was willing for that story to last forever. So the point that I'm trying to make is, people like to do. People have pride. They want to do things. Don't do things for them that they don't need you to do for them. And that's the point that we're trying to make here with reproducibility. You'll never forget that now. Train or teach others to do what they currently cannot do. So y'all probably couldn't remove the skunk, but now y'all know how to do it. I just taught y'all how to do it. The tricky part, though, is getting that steel trap open, because you can't stick your hand in there. You got to do it with the plastic on it and then switch. But we figured it out, so it can be done. But train or teach others to do what they currently cannot do. So these are two principles that we want to follow. So when we don't follow these things, what do we teach? You cannot do what I can do. Y'all remember that Gatorade commercial? Was it Gatorade back in the day? Anything you can do, I can do better. Anyway, you can't do what we can do. Right? And so this is one of the things that we communicate. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, most people around the world already have an opinion of Americans. And it's that Americans think they're better. So you can't do what we can do. Even if you could do it, we can do it better. You might be able to do it, but I'm going to tell you what, we got a better solution for that. You need to be careful. We do not believe that you're smart enough to learn. And again, we would never say these things, but this is what is perceived. Our way is the best way. Is that really what we want to be communicating to the people that we're trying to reach? What did we see from Paul? And the things you've heard from me say in the presence of many witnesses, and trust to faithful men who will also be able to teach others. So Paul had trainees who trained other men, and we are sitting in this room today as a result of that. And this is what we see. Paul tells Timothy with full confidence, go to Ephesus, go to Ephesus. I don't have to be there because I know you're there. And this is what we can do. Once we've trained others, we can trust them in the ministry as well. So some keys for making your efforts reproducible. Live by the principle that a little bit goes a long way. A lot of times we just, in America's bigger is better. Bigger is better. I mean, I always joke. I see these little guys riding around in their little sports cars. I told my wife the other day, I said, if I had $100,000, there's no way I'm going to ride around a little rinky-dinky sports car like that. I want a big old truck that's sitting way up off the ground that I can run that joker off the road. I want something that I'm not afraid to get dirty. Okay? Well, I am from North Florida, so I can't take that part out of me. But we are bigger is better, and sometimes it's not always better. Okay? We need to think about that. When using materials, try and use local materials. So this is a big one. We like, man, I don't know why, but American churches, we love doing Bible study. But it's funny, when we say Bible study, we don't mean that we're going to open up the scriptures and read this passage and study it together. What we mean is we're going to go to Lifeway and we're going to buy a book that's been written by Beth Moore, or I'm just picking on Beth Moore, I don't care, who's we're going to pick this Bible study by this person, and we're going to teach it. And, I don't know how many of them have been done over the history, but a lot. But I don't know how many of them have been reproduced either, but who knows. The point I'm trying to make is, though, we can try and bring all these resources from the outside, and all it's going to do is make the work not reproducible. So if it's a for example, if it's we're going to bring in outside projectors, we're going to bring in Lifeway materials. There's tons of good Spanish Lifeway materials. There is. I just don't think that's a long-term solution. I don't think that's a good long-term solution, because the people that you teach, they're going to think that they have to use those same materials to teach others. And what happens when they can't get hold of it? So when using materials, try and use local materials. Train using the MAL process. This is one of my favorite ones. Just kind of like saying MAL. But anyway, that's an acronym that stands for Model, Assist, Watch, and Lead. We want to teach people. We want to model something to people to what they're to do. Then we want to give them an opportunity to do it. But we're going to help. We're going to assist them in the process. Then we're just going to be there. We're going to sit there and we're going to watch them. We're going to allow them to do it. And then one day, just like Paul did with Timothy, Paul said, Timothy, it's time for you to go to Ephesus, brother. And Paul was able to leave Timothy, knowing full well that Timothy could do the things that Paul had taught Timothy to do. Never do anything alone. Never do anything alone. Always having someone with you that's watching, that's seeing, that's learning, that's growing, that's involved. Some questions to ask. So, what does the Bible say? If the Bible doesn't say it, it's not biblical. Does that make sense? I'm not saying it's not biblical, but I'm just saying if the Bible doesn't say it, it's not a biblical idea that has to be taught. So we need to be careful about that because it might be a tradition rather than from God's Word. What do others need in order to do what they should do? What are the things that they actually need? Is it resources or is it instruction and allowing them to do something on their own? Can others do this after we're done? And this is really, if you work, I can tell you how many times this has happened. It's been hundreds of, probably thousands. People have gone into an area, they've built or planted a church, and then about a year or two later, it does not exist. Because others could not do it after they left. And that is the key. That is the key. Can this be reproducible? This is a quote that we've seen a lot, but it says, the clearer your vision, the more that you will say no to. You are going to have thousands of suggestions that get brought up by church members on what they think you should do in Mexico. You're going to have meetings as you plan for your trips where ideas are going to get brought up. And at some point in time, you're going to have to say no to some of those ideas. And this is what happens. If you don't have a plan, and you don't know what you want to do, it's really hard to say no. Because you don't have a reason to. But if you've got a plan, and you know where you're going, and you know what you want to do, then it's a whole lot easier to go, I'm not saying that that's bad, but I'm just saying that doesn't fit what we're doing. And this is what we're doing. Because folks, reaching this people group with the gospel, it's not about your church. It's not about more people becoming interested in mission. It's about seeing people that do not have the gospel of Christ become brothers and sisters in the faith.
Amen.
That's what this is about. And let's sell out to that. And I know, I'm just going to tell you right now, because in the missions world they have this all the time. Feelings are going to get hurt in the process. But if we're focused on what we're doing, then it'll be a whole lot easier to keep moving along. And so anyway, I just want to challenge you guys with these things. And knowing when and how to say no will directly impact your ability to effectively implement strategies that will lead to success. We have a resource available that's just produced for this last year. This is just basically a handbook of a lot of things that the IMB has learned in the mission world, and it's got put into a book essentially. But it's not for one part of the world. It's kind of things that we've used, things that we've done, principles that we follow everywhere, regardless of where you're at. So it is incredibly, incredibly useful here in the U.S. I cannot give you this copy, but what I can give you is I've got I have a PDF version of this entire thing. I also you can also order them online from IMB, or I think they're maybe $4 or $5 a booklet like this. And I just encourage you, if it's something you're interested in, this would be a great resource. I think this is a great resource for the church. But anyway, I just want to let y'all know about that. I'll be happy to pass that information on to you through email and that type of thing. So
We can do that.